everybody, and welcome back to another lesson. Today, we're going to be talking about the 7 main parts of speech in English and how understanding them will help you improve your reading, writing, and speaking skills. So let's get started. After today's lesson, you will be able to identify the 7 most common parts of speech, understand the function of each part of speech, and have a solid foundation for more advanced writing and speaking lessons that we're going to cover later on. All right, let's start with nouns. A noun is a naming word that we use to identify people, places, things, ideas, and feelings. So, for example, a teacher is a person, John is a person, Miami is a place, a desk is a thing, education is a concept or idea, and sadness is a feeling. Nouns can be the subject, object, or complement in a sentence, so they're quite flexible. But we'll discuss that more in the sentence structure lesson later on. The main types of nouns that we're going to talk about today are common nouns and proper nouns. For common nouns, these are anything that identify general people, places, or things. So some examples would be boy, country, desk. So again, we're talking about a boy in general. So if you asked, is that a boy or a girl? Oh, I think it's a boy. You're just saying that I think it's a boy. We're not saying that, we're giving it a name like John. It's not a specific boy, okay? Same with country. We can say a country has laws, talking about countries in general, okay? A country has laws. That's one thing that makes it a country, right? But we're not naming a specific country. We're not talking about a specific country's laws. Common nouns usually need an article like a, an, or the, all right? And they're always lowercase. With proper nouns, we're talking about specific people, places, or things. So not just any person, but one specific person, a person with a name, right? Not just any place, but a specific place. Okay, so for example, John, that's a specific person. Miami, that's a specific place. And the Resolute desk is a specific desk. Proper nouns need capital letters and usually don't need an article, except for situations like the United States, but you wouldn't say the Germany because there's only one Germany, right? We'll cover that more in the articles lesson later on. All right, let's talk about pronouns. Pronouns are used in place of nouns to avoid repetition. So some examples, I, you, he, she, it, they, mine, yours, his, hers. These are all pronouns, okay? They replace other nouns so that we don't have to repeat the same noun over and over and over. So pronouns can function as subjects, objects, or what we call possessive. Now, the 6 main types of pronouns are personal, like I, you, or she. Okay, these are pronouns that replace the name of a person. Possessive, these are pronouns that show you that someone possesses something. Okay, so like mine, yours, his, hers. Then we have reflexive. So these are for talking about the same noun twice. So like I told myself or she gave herself, right? Reflexive. Then we have demonstrative, okay? So these demonstrate what you are talking about. So this, that, those, right? You demonstrate that those are what you are talking about, okay? These are what you are talking about. You're demonstrating that, all right? Then we have relative pronouns, which show relation, okay? So she is the person who gave me the sweater, all right? We show relation between her and something or someone else. Then we have indefinite pronouns, which are used to refer to unspecified people or things. So each person who comes in here, we're not being specific about which person or none of the people. Okay, again, we're not specifying a specific person. Okay, so it's indefinite, right? You don't need to worry about memorizing all these too much now because we'll cover them a lot more in another lesson. But right now, you need to be able to recognize that there are differences between pronouns and that they all have different jobs. All right, time to talk about verbs. If you've made it this far in your English learning journey, you've surely learned plenty about verbs already and probably had some frustrating moments with them, let's say. But verbs are commonly called action words, and they express actions or states of being or possession. So they can come in the form of these action verbs, which express what a noun is doing, right? Or they can be linking verbs, which express how something is or a property that something has. So action verbs express what a noun is doing, okay? They communicate some action that a noun is doing, right? So for example, think, study, grow, run. These are all verbs that show action. Sally runs around her neighborhood every Thursday. John kicked the trash can. Okay, these are sentences where verbs communicate what a noun or the subject is doing. Okay, all right, with linking verbs, we're using the same structure as we did with action verbs. However, with linking verbs, the verbs aren't communicating an action, they're just linking a noun with something else, okay? So we see here I use this equal sign, right? So the linking verb takes a noun and it links it to something else. So, for example, verbs like am, feel, and look, these are all linking nouns with adjectives, okay? So, I am tired links the pronoun I to the feeling of tired, all right? Sally feels sick links Sally, the noun, to the adjective of sick, okay? So we're saying Sally equals sick. It's important to understand the differences between these two types of verbs so that when we get to the sentence structure lesson, you fully understand what it is that I'm teaching. Oh, the evil verb tenses. Okay, just kidding. They're not that bad, but they can be a little bit tricky in English, especially for people who come from languages that are more what we call tenseless, okay? So verb tenses refer to the form of the verb that we need to use depending on the time frame that we are describing, okay? So changing the form of a verb based on the tense or the subject in the sentence is called verb conjugation, all right? The bulk of your time as an English learner when it comes to the tenses will go into learning verb conjugation. Okay, I have a whole course called Master the English Tenses. So if you haven't taken that already, please make sure to check it out if you're struggling with the verb tenses. All right, another frustrating thing about English is the large amount of irregular verbs that we have. Okay, we have so many irregular verbs in English, and it can be quite frustrating. These are verbs where the conjugation doesn't match the normal pattern of most other verbs. Okay, this is because English is really like a mashup of many other languages, and different verbs coming from different original languages with different systems end up together in the same language, and we just have to memorize different rules for both. Okay, so I always hate to tell students that there's not always a rule or a pattern or something like that. But this is one of the cases where you just have to memorize all of the irregular verbs. That's just what we're stuck with when we want to learn English. All right, phrasal verbs are another component that make English difficult because it's like you have to learn the regular form of the verb and then these common phrasal verbs that we actually use on a daily basis. Phrasal verbs are phrases that include a verb, but they have a unique meaning to them that's more than the meaning of the verb by itself. Okay, so for example, I can't make out what you said. Make out in this case means understand or decipher, but you're not really making anything, so it doesn't have much to do with the original meaning of the verb, right? So in speaking, you'll use phrasal verbs a lot more than you will the more formal one-word verb alternatives. But in academic or business writing, while it is okay to use phrasal verbs, you'll tend to use the more formal version, like one-word verbs, a lot more than you will the like informal phrasal verbs. Okay, adjectives. Adjectives describe or modify nouns and pronouns, all right? They provide more details about the place or the thing that you are discussing. So, for example, blue, quick, loud, interesting, funny, okay? These can all be used to describe a noun, right? So, which car am I talking about? I'm talking about the blue one. Which guy am I talking about? I'm talking about the loud one. Adjectives make your communication more vivid and engaging. but using them in the proper order is important to make sure that you sound like a native speaker. So make sure that you watch the lesson on word order where I cover this all in detail. Okay, let's move on to adverbs. So adverbs modify verbs, adjectives, and other adverbs, and they usually end in ly. The word adverb comes from combining the words adjective and verb, so you can think of them as adjectives for verbs. Adverbs give info about how, when, where, and to what degree. So some examples would be quickly, loudly, very, carefully, tomorrow. So how did he run there? He ran there quickly. How was she talking? She was talking loudly, all right? We're using all these adverbs to modify the verbs, okay? Give more info about the verbs and how they were doing something. When we look at the different types of adverbs, we have adverbs of manner, okay? So this is something like quickly. They explain the manner in which you did something, so how you did something. We have adverbs of time. These are words like yesterday or now. Adverbs of place, so where did the action happen, like here or there. Adverbs of frequency, so how frequently or how often does the action happen, like always or never. Then we have adverbs of degree, so you did something, but how hard did you do it? How difficult was something when you did it? It's very important to learn the correct placement of adverbs as well, because they're different depending upon the type of adverb that you're using. And if you mess these up, you'll stick out a bit to native speakers in your writing and speaking, okay? But again, don't worry, I cover all of this in the word order lesson. All right, conjunctions. So conjunctions connect words, phrases, and clauses together. Some examples are for, and, nor, but, yet, so, because, although. Conjunctions join parts of sentences together and make cohesive, logical sentences and paragraphs. They may be small little words, okay, but they're very important to writing good advanced sentences in English. And we're going to talk about them a lot in the sentence structure lesson, but for now, it's important that you know what they are. Okay, last one, prepositions. Prepositions show the relationship between other words in a sentence. Some common prepositions are on, under, above, to, with, into, and during. Prepositions are usually followed by nouns or pronouns in what we call prepositional phrases. So some examples of prepositional phrases are under the bridge, to Sally, or by the door. Prepositions are one of the most complicated things about learning English vocabulary because, again, you just have to memorize which prepositions go with which words, and it can take a lot of time. But don't worry, I'll cover prepositions in another lesson to help you learn them as easily as possible. All right, I've thrown a lot at you in this lesson, so let's summarize everything that we've discussed so far. So nouns name things and pronouns replace nouns. Verbs show actions or links between adjectives and nouns. Adjectives describe nouns. Adverbs modify verbs, adjectives, or other adverbs. Prepositions show relationships. And conjunctions connect words and sentences. All right, that's it for the parts of speech. I threw a lot of information at you in this lesson, but a lot of this is just the basics of each concept without a ton of depth, okay? So you need to have this basic knowledge of all these parts of speech for when we discuss word order and sentence structure in the following lessons. So that's why we had to cover it all here. But again, don't worry too much about understanding everything about all of these different parts of speech, okay? This was a foundational lesson that we'll use to build on more by going more in depth in each topic in the later lessons, okay? So as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next lesson.